Welcome into another edition of the Golden Blue Nation podcast, brought to you as always by Mountain State Oral and Facial Surgery, your premier dental implant destination. Nick Farrell here, and it's the eve of New Year's Eve, and that means that West Virginia, in both men's basketball and women's basketball, is getting ready to embark on Big 12 conference play. And again, in men's basketball, it is one of, if not the toughest leagues in the country. In fact, the latest from the bracketologist at ESPN, Joe Lunardi. He rates the Big 12 as the toughest league in the country heading into 2026. So to get you ready for Big 12 conference play, we welcome in our man, Cody Nespor, here on the Golden Blue Nation podcast. Cody, it's good to see you. Did you have a good holiday?
I had a great holiday, Nick.
That's wonderful. So for those of you who watched the Ross Hodge Show, the festive edition of the Ross Hodge Show last weekend, you know that Cody's key to a great Christmas was to relax. So did you get time to relax?
Yeah, I think after Christmas Eve and Christmas, there's those few days where you just don't do anything. And I did a whole lot of not doing anything.
Good for you, man. That's the best. I did the same, which is great. Like, it feels so good. It really does. But we're back here. We're back at it now. We're doing something now, and that's getting everybody ready for Big 12 conference play. And it is going to be a grind for West Virginia. Mountaineers entering Big 12 play after a 13-game non-conference slate. They're 9-4 overall. They're undefeated at home, so that's the good news under Ross Hodge. Have yet to lose at Hope Coliseum, but 0-4 in neutral site games. Haven't really played a true road game yet, although you could argue that some of those games were what you might call road neutral, like, for example, the Ohio State game in Cleveland. But West Virginia 0-4 in neutral site games, and all of those were against major conference opponents. So, Cody, as West Virginia gets ready to enter what Coach Hodge has dubbed an 18-round slugfest in Big 12 conference play, I think there's really two ways of looking at this. One is that you could say, well, West Virginia hasn't beaten a major conference opponent yet, and that doesn't bode well for this team in the conference that's been heralded for most of the last decade as the toughest league in the country. But I think you can also look at some of these results and say, well, West Virginia was really close against a lot of teams that are also going to be competitive in their league, specifically Ohio State. That game went to double OT and really could have gone either way down to the very last second. So how are you looking at this as West Virginia begins league play?
So, it feels like a long time ago. They did beat Pitt, who is in
That's true.
the ACC.
That's true.
Not that Pitt has, been very good.
I think I may have said that they're winless against major conference teams. I meant winless against major conference teams away from Hope Coliseum.
I got you.
Pitt technically is a major conference team, although they're not really playing like it, to be quite honest with you.
And to your point, in all four of their losses, except Xavier, who obviously just shot the lights out, they've had second half leads, and they've had pretty substantial second half leads. And those are games that, it's easy to envision them winning. Especially think about that Ohio State game. They had a big lead, double-digit lead in the second half, and ended up going to double overtime. Had a lead in the final, 5 seconds. So I think there is hope there. That the concern obviously is they didn't close any of them out. I think the biggest concern is the first true road game. You have to go to Iowa State, which is just going to be brutal. This is an older team, so you expect these guys to know how to play on the road. But for the Big 12 opener, for all of these guys' first taste of the Big 12, it's tough. It's a tough road trip.
Hilton Coliseum, always a tough place to play, especially when you consider that you're going up against the number 3 team in the country right now in the AP poll. But Cody, it's not like that's going to be a rarity this year as you look at West Virginia's schedule, right? Like, here's the first 5 games for WVU in Big 12 play. At number 3 Iowa State, home against Cincinnati, home against number 17 Kansas, on the road against a top 10 Houston team, and then back home against Colorado. So 3 of West Virginia's first 4 games in conference play are all against teams that are currently nationally ranked. I mean, that's a really tough slate for WVU to open league play under a new head coach.
And that's life in the Big 12, right? Like, you can spin this by saying, like, at least you get them out of the way, right? We don't do the double round robin anymore. And they play all these teams only once this year. So you get them out of the way, and then, by the second week of January, you know where you stand, right? Like, if you win if you beat a couple of those ranked teams, like we're looking at, you're in the top of the standings and you've made your way onto the tournament bubble and all that stuff. If you don't win any of them, then hey, the whole rest of the schedule's there, and like I said, you know where you stand, you know what you're gonna have to do over the next 2 months. So that's kind of the positive spin, right? There's no, they play BYU later, they play Arizona a little bit later, but there's no real like boogeyman. As long as you get through these games, that's the positive spin. The negative spin is like, man, that's a gauntlet. Like, man, if things go sideways, it can really have an effect on a team, mentally. Not that this team has really shown that. Like this, as far as West Virginia teams go, these guys are together. They're bought in as much as any team recently. So I don't know if that's a big concern, but it's tough. It's a tough 4-game stretch to start.
I think when you look at the bigger picture beyond this first couple of weeks, Cody, the good news for WVU is that there are a lot of very winnable games, at least it would seem at this point, at Hope Coliseum, right? Cincinnati is one that is winnable. Colorado is one that is winnable. Kansas State, Baylor may be a little bit tougher in terms of degree of difficulty. Certainly Baylor's got a quality team, but certainly winnable games at home. You play Cincinnati twice. So there are some wins here, right? Like it's not like this West Virginia team is going to be lucky to maybe just win 2 or 3 or 4 Big 12 games. I don't think that's the case at all. But you mentioned NCAA tournament resume, and I think my big thing for WVU, and this is probably very obvious, is that in order for West Virginia to have a shot at making the NCAA tournament, it's got to hold serve at home. It has to win those winnable games at home and maybe even pull off a couple of upsets along the way, including that early game against Kansas that's just around the corner here 2 Saturdays from now.
Right. That's been the formula in the Big 12 ever since West Virginia joined it. Like you have to win at home because all the road venues are some of the toughest in the country. And you host Kansas, you host Colorado, you host Kansas State. Those are 3 of your first 4 Big 12 home games. You kind of have to win those, to tread water. You go to Arizona State, you go to Arizona. That's not going to be an easy road trip. You host Baylor, you host Texas Tech. Those are a little bit different caliber of teams. And then even like you go to UCF, they're off to a good start, right? Like nobody really talks about UCF. They're off to a good start. It's not going to be easy to go down to Orlando and win. And so, yes, winning those home games and stealing one against a Kansas or Baylor or Texas Tech, that would go really far.
Absolutely, Cody. So let's dig in a little bit more into the bigger picture in terms of competition in the Big 12 Conference. So what are the numbers that back up the argument for the Big 12 being the toughest league in America? We're going to know by March how many teams make the NCAA tournament, but right now, 6 teams ranked in the AP Top 25 poll. 4 of them are ranked in the top 10. And there's a ton of teams that are ranked highly in the net as well. I think my count was either 5 or 6 Big 12 teams in the top 20 of the net heading into the first week of conference play. So that's roughly 40% of the conference, by the way. And then as you go further down the list, like you mentioned, teams like UCF, like Colorado, like Baylor, who are maybe sagging a little bit below some of the other teams like Kansas and Texas Tech, et cetera. Those teams are still really, really good and are going to be tough to beat, whether you're at home or on the road. So it's going to be a really tough schedule for West Virginia and for every team in the conference. Right now, the conference is headlined by Arizona, the team that spent the last 3 weeks at the top of the AP poll. And this is a team that West Virginia is going to play on the road later in January. In fact, it's a 2-game road trip for the Mountaineers at Arizona State on January 21st and then at Arizona on the 24th. Who knows if the Wildcats will be number 1 in the country, Cody, but it's very clear through non-conference play that this is a team that's going to contend for the conference title.
Yeah, they look like the best team in the country, like flat out. And obviously that changes when you get into conference play and they start playing some of the good teams we're talking about West Virginia playing. But it's hard to argue they've not earned it. And the guy, who really burst onto the scene, the first game of the year that caught everybody's attention, Koa Pete, freshman forward, scored 30 on Florida, right? The reigning national champions, 30. Arizona knocked them off. That caught everybody's attention, and obviously the hype continued, and they just kept going up and up and up the rankings, and like you said, they've been at the top for almost a month now.
Then right below Arizona is number 3 Iowa State. That's West Virginia's first opponent. That game is coming up Friday, January 2nd. It's a 9 p.m. Eastern tip on ESPN2 at Hilton Coliseum. So, man, that's quite a welcome to the Big 12 Conference for new head coach Ross Hodge. You go up against the number 3 Cyclones, a team that absolutely stomped then number 1 Purdue by 20-plus points. Iowa State is extremely, extremely good on offense this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's, how was there a spot for Arizona to be number 1? Because Arizona destroyed Purdue on the road. And that's been Iowa State's MO for this stretch where they've been really good, is they play modern offense where they don't hunt threes, they don't hunt drives to lane, they don't hunt layups, they just hunt open shots. And so they're top 5 in the country in field goal percentage, they're top 5 in 3-point percentage, even though they don't take a lot of threes. They're in the 200s in 3-point attempts per game, but they knock them all down because they get open shots. And that's what they've been doing, for years. And that's what they're doing again this year. They average 90.5 points per game. And we've seen it, like going back to like when Tyrese Halliburton was in college. Like that was kind of the start of this, where it's modern offense, but not in the sense that they're just jacking threes. It's modern offense in that they don't care what shot they get as long as it's open and they're going to make it.
So after Iowa State, another team that's on the docket for West Virginia very early on in Big 12 play is the team that's currently number 8 in the country, and that's Houston. Cougars went to the Final Four last year. It's very clear that since joining the conference, Houston, and even before that really, but Houston is sort of the hallmark defensively in terms of teams that are nationally dominant on the defensive end. And when Coach Hodge arrived on campus in the spring, he said that he wanted to make West Virginia a dominant defensive team again. And by making WVU one of the best defensive teams in the Big 12, it would then, therefore, be one of the best defensive teams in the country. And you have to look no further than Houston as a team that has been the best defensive team in the Big 12 and the country as recently as last year. And right now, West Virginia and Houston are sort of neck and neck in terms of points allowed per game, scoring defense, which is one of those real indicators of teams that are truly good defensively. The only team that's playing better defense in that category right now than West Virginia is Houston.
Yeah, I think Houston's at 60 points a game and West Virginia's at like 63. And it shouldn't be a surprise. Like you said, Ross came in his introductory press conference and he 4 or 5 times said, we want to be like Houston. We want to play defense like Houston. We want, so it's going to be a little bit of like master and pupil, even though Ross has never worked with Kelvin Sampson, but that's the team he's emulating here. That's the coach he's emulating here. And so that's a game like 1st to 50 might win that game, right? I mean, if we're lucky to get to 50. But yeah, they're just as good as they always are, right? Like one of the best defensive teams in the country, highly efficient on offense. Their only loss was to a ranked Tennessee team by 3. And like they haven't been in the Big 12 for long, but we know what to expect from Houston because they do it every single year.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Cody. If you liked Browns Steelers 13-6 Sunday on CBS, you will love West Virginia versus Houston at the Fertitta Center coming up in January. So those teams are 1, 3, and 8 in the AP poll this week. Arizona 1, Iowa State 3, Houston 8. Then the team at number 10 to give the Big 12 4 teams in the AP top 10 is BYU. Now, you mentioned Pete for Arizona, who has had a really good freshman debut, but arguably, Cody, the best freshman in the country and maybe even the best player in college basketball this year suits up for the BYU Cougars.
Yeah, it's AJ DiBonsa. Everybody knows when he committed to BYU, it was national news. Like this is one of these high school guys, like Cooper Flagg, right? Like when he was coming out of high school, everybody figured he'd be the number 1 overall pick, and he was. Same thing with AJ DiBonsa. Like we're going on like a year and a half of him being next year's number 1 overall pick. And dang, if he doesn't play like it for the Cougars. His most recent game, a 36, 10 rebound, 10 assist, triple-double, one of the few triple-doubles in the country on the men's side this season. He's averaging 23.1 points, 7.2 rebounds, 3.8 assists as a freshman, right? As an 18-year-old freshman. And really, in Kevin Young's second year, he has transformed BYU. We talk about Iowa State being modern. This guy, Kevin Young, came straight from the NBA, and that's what he's made BYU into. Just an NBA style team, except they actually play a little bit of defense, unlike the NBA. And now he's got, someone who should be a premier NBA talent kind of running the show.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's been so much hype about DeBonsa, and he has really lived up to it, man. Like, that triple-double stat is insane, by the way. To score 36 points in a college basketball game is one thing. Like, there are very few players who can do that. To do it 36, 10, and 10 is in the same night is just insane. So those are the top 4 teams that would appear in the Big 12 right now. But there are some other contenders who maybe could compete for the championship, who maybe could compete for one of the top seeds in the Big 12 tournament. And one of those teams is not a shocker. It's coming up early on West Virginia's schedule. In fact, it's game number 3 in Big 12 play, and that's, of course, the Kansas Jayhawks. But, Cody, Kansas maybe not off to as great of a start as anticipated, with a few losses to major conference opponents.
Yeah, it seems crazy, even 2 years ago, to think that you would talk about the best teams in the Big 12 and Kansas would be an afterthought.
Right.
But you're right. They weren't dominant in non-conference. But you look, they have 3 losses. They're to North Carolina, Duke, and UConn. And it's like, okay, if you're going to lose to 3 teams, might as well be the 3 other blue bloods. But it's one of those things, like, write Kansas off at your own expense, like make them a second thought at your own expense, because they'll just come back in February, March, and maybe win the Big 12 and maybe go to the Sweet 16, right? Like that's always possible for Kansas because they always have so much talent.
Absolutely, Cody. So that's a team that comes to Hope Coliseum. Remember, last year, West Virginia went to Fog Island Fieldhouse and beat the Jayhawks in Lawrence for the first time. This year, it's at Hope Coliseum, Saturday, January 10th, and we'll have a full edition of Mountaineer Game Day Hoops Edition to preview that matchup for you, starting at 10 a.m. on the local Nexstar stations in West Virginia. Those are WBOI in Clarksburg, WTRF in Wheeling, WOWK in Charleston, WVNS in Beckley. It all leads up to a noon tip at Hope Coliseum between the Jayhawks and Mountaineers, which will either air on Fox or FS1. Okay, Cody, those are maybe the top 5 teams in the Big 12, the 4 highest ranked teams and Kansas. But who are the other squads who could make some noise in the league and could be tough outs for any opponent, not just West Virginia?
Yeah, just like Kansas, like, it seems insane that we haven't talked about Baylor yet. Like, under Scott Drew, just has been one of the most dominant teams in the league, for forever. And we haven't talked about them. They obviously they've been in the national news, right? They just signed a former NBA draft pick, 2023 second round draft pick, James Nagy, 7-footer. He's a little bit older because he's been playing professionally in Europe. That's obviously been in the news, but agree with it or don't, he's gonna wear a Baylor jersey and play for Baylor this year, so you have to prepare for it. Baylor's had a really short bench through non-con. Like, they've had a couple injuries, which is why they went out and got this guy. But they have the best offense in the league. They average 93 points a game, but because there's so many other good teams, nobody really talks about them. So it's one of, like, I don't know at this point what to think about Baylor. I don't know what to think about this guy they've brought in that was involved in an NBA trade this summer, which is insane to talk about a guy who's going to play college, but like it or not, like I said, he's going to suit up. He's going to play. And then the other one, Texas Tech. Remember Texas Tech? Hey, remember JT Toppin, the reigning Big 12 Player of the Year? He's really good. Texas Tech is really good. But again, I mean, we haven't talked about them. Nobody's talking about them because of all the other teams. But just like I said with Kansas, like, if Texas Tech wins the Big 12 tournament, would anybody be shocked? If JT Toppins repeats as Big 12 Player of the Year, would anybody be shocked? No, but like, through the first month and a half of the season, nobody's really talking about the Red Raiders. And again, I think that's, do that at your own expense, because they'll just sneak up in March and, like I said, go to the Sweet 16 maybe.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll quickly preview Big 12 play for West Virginia women's basketball. That and more ahead on the Golden Blue Nation podcast, brought to you as always by Mountain State Oral and Facial Surgery, home of the Same Day Smile.
The reason I came to the practice was because I had some teeth extracted, and I wanted to get some replacements for it. We did a treatment plan to see how many implants they were going to place, and now I'm actually just waiting to get the crowns. The thing I like the most about coming here, I was greeted with a smile, everything ran smooth, and that they were really going to do what I wanted them to do to make my smile a little better. They're some of the best doctors, and you will get good quality care.
Searching for a mortgage lender that's 100% local, personal, and focused on home loans? First Green Mortgage has been serving West Virginia for more than 35 years, and they can assist you with every step of your home ownership journey. Visit them in Bridgeport or Morgantown or at fgm.bank.
Golden Blue Nation podcast continues, pivoting from men's basketball into women's basketball. Mountaineer men, they open Big 12 play January 2nd. That's a Friday night against the Cyclones. Mountaineer women playing on New Year's Day, a 2-game road trip, first against Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse January 1st, then at Kansas State Sunday, January 4th. So Cody Nesper's back with us, our digital beat writer, for some quick notes on Big 12 women's basketball. Let's start with the Mountaineers. Cody, Coach Kellogg's crew dominated Houston before the holiday break, winning 101-46, scoring 100+ in a Big 12 game for the first time in program history. Before that, the Mountaineers were 3-2 against power conference opposition, with losses to Ohio State by 2 points and Villanova by 22 points. Now, it's a very good Villanova team, but Coach Kellogg was adamantly disappointed about that result at Hope Coliseum. Just give me your thoughts on where the Mountaineers stand heading into conference play.
Well, they feel really good about themselves right now. And like you said, that Villanova game was really bad, and Mark Kellogg wasn't shy about talking about how bad it was. And since then, they've steamrolled everybody. Their margin of victory since then is over 40 points. They're averaging over 90 points a game after that. And, are they playing the best teams in the country? No. But they're doing what they should do against lower caliber teams, which is run them out of their building, which they have. And so they feel really good. They felt really good after that Houston game going into the Christmas break. And they come out this little road swing in Kansas. I think will be really good for them at Kansas State. Those are two decent teams in the Big 12. Like, if you go and win those two on the road, they're I don't want to say one of the hottest teams in the conference, because there's some really hot teams in the conference right now, but they'll be feeling really, really good about themselves going into tougher matchups against Texas Tech at home and then on the road at Iowa State.
For sure, Cody. So you mentioned the Cyclones. They're number 10 in the country right now. They've got one of the best players in the sport in Audie Crooks on their team. Another team to look out for is TCU. The Horned Frogs won the Big 12 a season ago, Big 12 championship, by edging Baylor in Kansas City. They're really good again. No Haley Van Lith, but that's okay. TCU number 8 in the country. And what do you know? West Virginia plays those two teams back to back. First at Iowa State, Sunday, January 11th, then turn around to host TCU at Hope Coliseum Wednesday, January 14th. If the Mountaineers are on a roll, if they do sweep this 2-game road trip at Kansas and take care of business against Texas Tech, you're right. They should be feeling good about themselves going into those 2 games. But those feel like 2 games that could be a turning point or a defining moment in the season to determine if this West Virginia team can really compete for a Big 12 championship or is going to finish somewhere around 4th or 5th, as it has done under Coach Kellogg before.
Yeah, and those would be the 2 favorites right now. TCU and Iowa State, they're both in the top 10. And kind of like I said with the men, playing them back to back, it's tough, but at least you'll know where you stand. Like, if you lose both of those, it'd be really tough to sneak into a top 2 seed for the Big 12 tournament. But you could finish 3rd or 4th or 5th, and obviously still have a chance. And if we want to start with Iowa State, because they play them first, you said one of the best players in the country. Audie Crooks, it just is the best player in the country. She's leading the country in scoring. She averages 28.9 points a game. That's over 8 points more than the second place scorer in the Big 12. She's shooting over 70% from the field. I did the math yesterday. She takes, I think, 25% of all of Iowa State's shots, and she makes 70% of them. She's the best player in the country, I think. And we see her highlights go viral every other week, seemingly, because she drops 40 points in 20 minutes or something crazy. And it's, the Big 12 might just come down to who can play the best defense against her. I don't know anybody can, but we'll see. And then TCU, if we're talking about one of the best players in the country, Olivia Miles, the only player in the nation with multiple triple doubles. She had 3 in a row, Nick, leading into Big 12 play. She kind of got. It's interesting. You mentioned Haley Van Lith left. Well, here's Olivia Miles. She's tired of playing second fiddle at Notre Dame. Oh, I'll just go become maybe the second best player in the Big 12 at TCU. Why not? And she has, and they have the highest scoring duo in the league. 2 girls, both over 18 points a game. They look just as good as last year. It seems impossible because they graduated almost everybody.
Yeah, I do just want to quickly go back and note Texas Tech is not to be overlooked.
Exactly.
The Red Raiders, they're undefeated. So it's really a 3-game stretch versus Texas Tech at Iowa State, and then versus TCU at home. 3 games in a span of about a week that really could be a defining moment early in the season in Big 12 play for West Virginia. You mentioned Iowa State and Audie Crooks. I wonder if the solution is not how you defend Crooks, but how you defend the rest of the team, right? Because while Iowa State is number 3 in the Big 12 in terms of scoring margin and is right up there near the top of the league in terms of points per game, against decent power conference opposition, the games have been close, right? The game against Iowa at home was a 5-point game that really could have gone either way at the very end. And then Iowa State in its Big 12 opener needed a last-second shot to beat Kansas 79-76. So it's not like, Audie Crooks is a cheat code. Like, let's just be clear about that. But it's not like Iowa State is invincible. So far, the Cyclones haven't lost, but maybe they haven't played a team that is as diverse as West Virginia is. I know West Virginia maybe defensively hasn't been as good as it has been in past years without J.J. Quinterly and without Kaya Watson. But if you can defend really, really well 70 feet away from the basket, Audie Crooks is not going to get the ball, right? And maybe that's the thing that makes West Virginia different than some of the other teams in the conference. If they can play pressure defense really well, it could throw ISU off.
Yeah. Audie Crooks reminds me, not in how they play, but just physically of when Anthony Davis was in college, where physically nobody could match up with him. And it's the same with Audie Crooks. Like, you can't front her, you can't double team her. Like, we joked the other day, all her highlights, like, it's girls in the post literally just bouncing off her because she's bigger and stronger and she has elite footwork. And that reminds me, like I said, of Anthony Davis, where just physically nobody could guard him. And you think about that national championship team, to your point, he was surrounded by other NBA talent. I don't think Audie Crooks is surrounded by other elite talent, so maybe that is the way to get to Iowa State.
For coverage of all things Big 12 Conference basketball from a West Virginia perspective, make sure you follow Cody's reporting throughout Big 12 play, starting New Year's Day with a women's basketball contest at Kansas, and the day after as the Mountaineer men and Coach Ross Hodge embark on Big 12 play at Iowa State. He's our digital beat writer, Cody Nespor. Cody, always a pleasure to have you on the show, man.
It was a pleasure to be on the show.
Thank you, Cody. All right, that's a wrap on this edition of the Golden Blue Nation podcast. We're brought to you, as always, by Mountain State Oral and Facial Surgery, your premier dental implant destination. For Cody Nespor, I'm Nick Farrell, signing off. We'll talk to you next time on the GBN Pod.